Good morning. It's almost October. How is everybody? Hanging in there? So everyone looks sleepy, right? I understand. It always feels like we're like right at that halfway point. Like all the first exams have gone through, everyone's tired, but hopefully we'll hang in there. We have today, and then obviously we'll have our next class too, but it's not till next week. It's already Wednesday. It feels so strange. It feels like I'm off by a day this whole week already, but we'll keep going today with chapter 11. We're going to start our next unit. In this unit, we'll look at orientation. We'll look at love, communication, intimacy, childhood, adolescent, and adult sexuality, and then sexual expression. So lots of kind of fun and interesting topics. I wanted to talk for 1 second about the exam. I hope you felt like it went well. Most of you should be really happy with your scores. So just a little bit of kind of a perspective as far as how everybody did. So you can kind of think about how you did in comparison. The high score on the exam was 100. Right? There were a couple of people who got 100%, which is fantastic. I think that's amazing. The low score was a 66. Right? So a little bit of a range. And then the average score was a 91. So the average was right around a low A. So there were a ton of A's in the exam, which is fantastic. Hopefully that means everyone was really good about it, prepared. I think it was pretty straightforward. Most of you did great on it, like I said. And the average amount of time people take the test was 53 minutes and 27 seconds. So most of you have more than enough time. You had 75 minutes. Most of you finished between like 53 and 56 minutes. So what I'd like to encourage you to do, and I feel like I always give the same like little spiel in every class, but I think it's important, always use the exams as kind of an opportunity to evaluate what you have been doing. All right. So if you scored really well and you're happy with your score, which should be a lot of you, do the same thing in this next unit. Study the same way, do the same amount of reading, right? Prepare, take notes the same amount, do everything the same if you're happy with how you did. If you wish you had done a little better, this is a great time to kind of change that up a little bit, maybe do the study guide more, or if you didn't do the study guide, consider doing it next time. Read a little bit more, take notes differently. Again, most of you should be really, really happy, but if you aren't, this is a great time to kind of reevaluate as we go into the next unit. Still lots of points left, and most of you, as I said, most of you did really, really well. There were only a couple of scores that were on the lower end, otherwise a lot of A's and B's. Any comments about the test? Hopefully, was it what you expected? You feel okay about it? Saw like 2 nods and a thumb. Oh, I'll take it, right? Hopefully you felt okay about it. Again, we'll move on from here. The exams aren't cumulative. So when we start this next unit today, the next exam will be on everything from here forward. So I won't say forget what you have learned in the first unit, but you don't need to study it for the next exam. So this exam will just be everything from here to the next one. And then the final is just a third test. So none of them are cumulative, which I think is nice. I think cumulative tests are the worst. So I just don't give them. You'll have a little like reflection paper at the end that will give you a chance to think back, but you won't need to study anything from this first unit ever again. Any thoughts, comments, anything at all before we keep going? I want to point one thing out, and I'll remind you again when I see you next class, but next Wednesday, 1 week from today, I have a planned absence. So I put that in the syllabus. It's been in there like this whole time. I'm going to Disneyland, right? I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be really sick on Wednesday next week. I can feel it coming. And the only thing that can cure that is a churro, really, or like 12 churros, really. No, I'm going to Disneyland. I'm so excited. It's been 3 years. I haven't been since before COVID. We used to go like 5, 6, 7 times a year. And my kids, last time they went, they were 5 and 7 in strollers and everything. Like it's going to be so different this time. Though I feel like I'm going to have to like look up how to do Disneyland now. Has anyone been in the last couple of years? Is it different than it like used to be? They got rid of Fast Pass, right? Yeah, that's too bad. I had that down. I had the Fast Pass system down. Now you have to buy like a $20 thing, right?
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yeah, because we were there for senior grad night, so it was like
Yeah.
all day. So like it kind of worked out.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up. I have to do my research. I know where all the churro stands are, and I know when they open, right? I have that mastered, but now I gotta relearn. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I gotta look it up. I imagine it's a little bit different than before, but I'm ready. Yes, so I will be violently ill next Wednesday. And I won't be here. So I just want to kind of put that out there. It's on the syllabus, and I'll remind you on Monday. But that way you can sleep in. Hopefully you don't come. You might remember we won't have class. So sleep in, enjoy your time. I'm not going to give you an assignment or anything like that. It's just going to be a missed day. Yeah. It is the 5th. The 5th. So 1 week from today, next Wednesday. Okay. All right. So we will move into chapter 11. We're obviously going a little bit out of order, but I think it's an order that makes sense. So I kind of like doing it this way, but we'll look a little bit today at what is orientation, what are some of the more common orientations, things that influence it, how do we measure it, some societal attitudes and laws and discrimination, a little bit specifically about bisexuality. So this will take us a couple of days to get through, but if we look at what is orientation, remember this is different than somebody's gender identity. They're very commonly confused and blended together, and they might influence each other, but they're different, right? So somebody's sexual orientation, remember the little video clip I showed you, right? Who you go to bed as. That's a good pun. Keep them straight, right? Unintentional, but funny anyway. But orientation is your preference for who you engage in kind of intimate relationships with, the people that you prefer to be around, right? So this is a little bit more than just who you are physically intimate with. It's who you emotionally prefer, who you tend to be comfortable around, who you're attracted to, and also, you know, who you might engage in like intimacy or sex with. But it is more than just sex, right? And so when you think about it in a deeper way and kind of start looking at those different layers, it gets a little bit more complicated, right? And there are people who propose, like Kinsey, who we'll talk about a little more in a minute, people who propose that we're all born bisexual and that we choose which way to go. There are other people who say that this is something that is fixed from birth or that it develops later. We don't really know what causes orientation. But there are kind of 4 main orientations that we typically talk about, 3, and then a 4th one that's definitely worth mentioning. But it's very oversimplified. Our culture, and we talked about this with gender, loves to put people in like these neat, clean boxes. Like you are straight, you are gay, you are bisexual, you are asexual, whatever it might be. Sexuality and orientation, very fluid, right? Somebody might identify themselves as heterosexual their whole life. And then they meet somebody and all of a sudden they identify themselves as bisexual or decide that they are now homosexual, right? This is something that can change, even though we tend to view it as very fixed and static. So the main orientations, right? Homosexual would be being attracted to and drawn to people of the same sex, right? So a man being attracted to and drawn to other men, a woman being attracted to and drawn to other women. We sometimes go one step farther to say like gay or lesbian. So these aren't perfect terms either. Traditionally, we refer to gay as talking about men and lesbian as talking about women. But that's, again, not always the case, right? And sometimes gay is more of like an umbrella term for either, right? For men or women. And gay, the term gay itself is kind of an interesting term. If you look at the history of this word, just as kind of an old or a side note here, the term gay comes from an old French word, guy, as the A-I, right? And in the 12th century, the term gay meant somebody who was joyful and carefree. So if you said someone was gay, you were saying they were happy, right? They were really joyful, happy, carefree, right? And interesting that we ended up where we did with that word, but that's what it tended to mean back in like the 12th century. In the 17th century, right, this word evolved quite a bit over time. It was associated with immorality. So somebody was overly carefree, to the point of being like reckless and oftentimes uninhibited by kind of any moral restraints. So they were overly carefree, right? Not caring about restraints or like proper behavior. And then in the 1900s, it actually started to become what we tend to think of it, which was a disregard for conventional sexuality. You could say conventional in quotes. So what happened, right, is in the 1900s, it kind of went one step further. Instead of being just immoral, now it was immoral in terms of having a disregard for like conventional sexuality, which meant being heterosexual. And so somebody who was straight, following the straight and conventional path, was conforming to normal sexuality. And gay became kind of like the antonym to that of somebody who was disregarding kind of conventional sexuality. So that's where we get this gay, straight kind of terminology that developed back in the 1900s. But homosexual, whether it's gay or lesbian or just homosexual in general, we're talking about somebody who is attracted to and drawn to members of the same sex. Heterosexual would be the opposite sex, right? So men being attracted to women and vice versa. Bisexual is somebody who's attracted to either or both. You could go either way with that. You could say it's somebody who is open to either sex or attracted to both sexes. And asexual, which is somewhat uncommon, is somebody who doesn't have any sexual attraction or kind of pull toward either sex. Very uncommon, but it is kind of a growing sexuality, sexual orientation that we talk about. So these are the main four that we traditionally mention. Now, there's a lot of other terms that people use, but when you break them down, these are kind of the four ways that orientation tends to manifest. And as I said, this tends to be oversimplified, right? It's not so neat and clean as we like to think it is. And so I have a little activity to kind of hopefully make that point a little clearer. If you could find a couple of people around you, let's say like 3 people, 2, 3, 4 people, whatever's easy and convenient. You're not turning this in, but what I'm going to give you is a list of 10 scenarios. And on this sheet, I want you to decide, is this individual heterosexual, lesbian, gay, bisexual, or you could add asexual. It's not on there, but you can feel free to add it. There's at least one that I think fits that criteria. It's not always obvious. You might wish you had more information, but you don't. So just make up your mind as best you can. So find a couple of people around you. Yeah, with only those. Yeah, with these 4 options that are right here. So find a few people and then send one person up to grab one of these. Feel free to write on it. And I have plenty if you want more than one. Feel free to take one. Yeah.
He's not a lesbian. She has a lesbian. All right, so let me get your attention. And then I think that's I don't like doing it. I know. Yeah, it's so true, right? Like, I think we go, okay, but it's that's like, no, I know that. Right, breaking.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thanks. All right, everybody, join the Kahoot.
I know.
I just. It wasn't. That's in this one. Like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Ready to go?
Okay, so we're not gonna vote on all of these. We're gonna vote on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. And you don't have to agree with what your team said. You can vote whatever you want. I tried to give everyone a sheet just in case you needed it to reference. All right, is everybody logged in? Everyone good? 20, okay. All right, here we go. So we're gonna vote on okay, for person number 1, what do you think this person's orientation is? Number 1. Okay. You need to answer? Uh-oh. All right, so number 1. Interesting. Okay, so number 1, we have a woman who has a number of romantic relationships with women and is not interested in pursuing relationships with men. Okay, I feel like this is probably one of the more clear ones on this sheet, right, as most of you voted for, right? So number of relationships with women, not interested in men, seems relatively straightforward that she identifies as homosexual or lesbian or gay, right? And most of you thought that. I don't know if maybe these were mistakes or they were accidents. Okay, how many accidents do you get before it counts? No, I'm just kidding. We'll talk about that in a minute, right? Okay, all right, here we go. Next one. The next one we're going to do is number 2, right? So a man who has had several romantic relationships with women and men, though he strongly prefers relationships with men. Okay. So number 2. All right, interesting. Okay, so most of you bisexual, right? A couple of people said lesbian or gay. Any thoughts? Like, why did you vote what you voted? Yeah. Okay.
Each relationship, right?
Sure.
Meaning, but it's a very deep relationship.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough, right? He's had romantic relationships with both, even though he prefers men. So you decided that that person would be more bisexual, right? Anyone have a different thought? There were a couple of people who said that he was gay. Any comments as to why you voted what you did? I'm assuming that maybe because it said he strongly prefers men. And it was interesting as I was walking around, so many of you were like, I'm just going to mark bisexual because I don't know. It's a very common stereotype as well, which we'll talk about when we get to bisexuality. But I think most of you, right, tended to think this person was bisexual, despite the fact that he prefers men over women. So next we're going to do is number 5, a woman who has self-identified as heterosexual all her life, but finds herself sexually attracted to a new female coworker. So number 5, here we go. That was fast, right? Okay, interesting. So most of you said bisexual. A handful of you said heterosexual, 1 lesbian or gay. Why? What do you think? We're kind of all over. Like, why did you vote what you voted? There's no wrong answer here. These are fictional people, right? Okay, maybe, right? So why would some of you said heterosexual? Why did you vote that? Yeah.
Well, I said heterosexual because she self-identifies as that. you can't take that away,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and since like sexuality is such a big spectrum, it's like, yeah, to societal standards you're bi, but people can't tell you you're bi.
Yeah. I love that. And I heard a lot of heated debates, which made me really happy just to tell you. But I heard debates of like, well, that's how she identifies. So if that's how she identifies, then that's what her orientation is, right? And is it enough, right? So it says she's attracted to a new female coworker, right? Is that enough to change her orientation? You said no. I mean, what do you think? Does she need to act on it for it to matter to you, right? It's kind of an interesting, like, personal opinion, right? Everybody tends to have their own line for where you've crossed it, right? But she identifies as heterosexual. So I would tend to vote for heterosexual because that's what she's saying. But a lot of you voted bisexual. Yeah.
This, because obviously there's no way to know.
Yeah.
But I did notice that from what I understand, it kind of seems like past tense.
Okay.
Like she has up to this point.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's changing, right? Okay. And it is tricky. I give you what, one sentence per person. Like, I mean, obviously our sexuality is so much more complicated than that. But interesting to see we're a little bit split. This one's probably my personal favorite here. All right. So number 8. And number 8. A woman who has had a sexual relationship with her college roommate a decade ago, but since then has had sexual relationships only with men. Okay. So number 8. Go. Turn the music up. Okay, so most of you heterosexual, and then 6 of you bisexual. So thoughts on our number 8 person here? Yeah.
Sounds like
Okay. So which one did you vote? Bisexual? Okay, other thoughts? Yeah. Okay. And then traditionally in the dorms, right, your roommate is of the same sex, but we don't know. I'm assuming that means that there's probably another woman, right? Yeah. Let's make a story, right? I want a story.
And then maybe she's like, not for me, and it's just straight, and she has.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question for you. Ready? Here we go. I'm gonna have you vote on it. Follow-up question. How many times can you experiment before it counts? 1, 2, 3, 4 plus. And this is your personal opinion, right? Okay, there is no agreement whatsoever in here. So, all right. All right. So some of you said 1, some of you said 2, some of you said 3, some of you said 4 plus. So this is just something that's, I think, is fascinating to think about. Right. So really common with this person with number 8 here. She doesn't have a name. I want to give her a name. Barbara. I don't know. Right. Number 8. Right. She experimented once 10 years ago. And we're really willing to be like, oh, that was once back in college. But again, how many times before it counts? There's no agreement at all in here as to how many. So some of you said 1, 2, 3, 4 plus. Some of you are very liberal. You can have like 12 experiments before it counts. So, I mean, it's just interesting to think about, right? We tend to have that like, oh, it was college. They were just experimenting, or maybe it didn't go well, or maybe, I mean, we don't have any details here, right? But at what point do we consider that part of your sexuality? And again, no agreement. Any other thoughts on that? Any other like comments about her, like, about how many times before it counts? Like some of you said 4 plus. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could experiment 48 times and decide it didn't matter, right? Like if that's what you want to do, right? The key with orientation and just like gender identity, it's whatever you want it to be. Now, that doesn't mean it's always sensical, right? Or makes sense to other people. I think I told you before, like I'm dad in our house. I think I shared that, and I'm coaching these two soccer teams, and yesterday at practice, one of the girls came up to me and she's like, "Why are you dad?" Like really aggressively. She's 8 and she's like, "I don't understand. Why are you dad?" Like, and like it was like the funniest thing to me because it was so like out of nowhere. We're in the middle of a soccer drill and she runs up and she's like, "Hey, why are you dad?" Like, what were you thinking about? But and I'm trying to explain it to her. I'm like, well, that's what I feel comfortable like being. It fits me in our family. Like we have someone who is a very mom role and someone who's a very dad role. She's like, "Oh, okay," and then ran back. Like that was all she needed, right? It was really cute. And then someone else ran up 3 minutes later. She's like, "Why do you have short hair?" I'm like, "Oh my God, what is this, gender day?" And like I was like, "Because I like having short hair." She's like, "Well, it's boy hair." I'm like, "What does boy hair look like?" She's like yours. I was like, "Well, lots of girls have short hair, like, and lots of girls have long hair, right? I could see several with short hair, several with long hair. Like, it doesn't have to matter." And she's like, "Oh, okay," and ran back. I'm like, this is just like me challenging the stereotype day. Like, it was actually kind of cool because they were so open to it. They just wanted an explanation, right? And I was fine with that. Like, I don't mind. And so I think the same with orientation. Whatever you decide, like I was telling a group over here, I knew a man in college who identified as lesbian. Like he was a straight guy interested in women, only women, and he self-identified as lesbian. And I was like, I feel like you're just being difficult, but if that's what you want to be, who am I to judge, right? Like, who am I to say that's weird, right? Especially with my gender identity, who am I to judge? But it's interesting with this that we're all over the place, and I think that just really drives home this point that there's no universal agreement when it comes to Asian. Did you have a thought? What was that?
The song is.
Yeah, right. Yep. No, I know what you're talking about. Any other thoughts or anything else? Anything else here with this person? We have one more that we'll vote on, but I think by far she's the most interesting because, again, no agreement on how many times before it counts. And maybe she had a bad experience. That's why she never went back. Who knows? I want more information. Okay. Last one, number 9. A man who has never felt sexually attracted to anyone or had a sexual relationship. Number 9. Number 9. Maybe a misvote, right? And I think, yeah, asexual, right? So not the most common orientation, but again, there are some people who just don't have that level of attraction or interest in relationships with people. Again, it's not the norm by any means, but it is an orientation that is kind of growing in popularity. Yeah. Number 4, let's go back to number 4. A middle-aged man who has self-identified as gay since his teens, but who has twice cheated on his male partner by having sexual encounters with women. Interesting, right? So I don't have a Kahoot for it, but let's vote on him really quickly. So how many of you, just by show of hands, put heterosexual? Anybody? How about lesbian? Who knows, right? How about gay? Couple people, bisexual? Again, right, when in doubt, we're going to choose bisexual. That just kind of tends to happen. I mean, so what do you think? What was your thought on number 4? Yeah.
This is,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. Because I think if you self-identify as it.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I heard you all debating about it, which again made me happy. Anyone else? Other thoughts on him? Yeah. Sure.
Thanks.
And I love that, right? Like it's a very progressive mentality, right? I don't know if you recognize how progressive that is, but to both of you and so many of you be like, well, if that's what he says, then that's what he is, right? But if you back away from his label, like traditionally we would define that as bisexual, but if he identifies that way, then that's his orientation. Yeah. I don't know, right? I mean, he keeps cheating on, right? He's cheating on his male partner by having encounters with women. I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like, is he in denial about his orientation? Is that part of his orientation? Is he experimenting? Right? We need more. But yeah, I mean, he identifies one way, so I default to that. But I don't think it's clear. Like, it's tricky, and that's kind of my point with these, right? I wanted it to be tricky. I wanted you to see that, like, I need more information, right? Because it isn't so clear. If somebody self-identifies one way, then you're going to default to that, or you should. But again, you know, how many times before it counts? If you are with both partners, should that count, right? And so the takeaway, as I said, and we'll close this now. Thank you for playing the Kahoot with me. Is that really it comes down to, again, like what you would decide, right? And in general, this isn't something that is very static, right? It is very fluid. There are lots of people, I know people in my life who have been with one partner for a very long time, and then all of a sudden meet somebody else, right? And they're of a different gender or a different sex, and all of a sudden their label of themselves changes, right? Everybody kind of has, you know, a whole variety here, and it's not as neat as we tend to want it to be. Right. And then it can get really involved when we start looking at people who change gender, and then who are they attracted to, right? So somebody who's biologically male, but then transitions to be female, but they're attracted to women, right? Now what, right? And again, our culture wants to label it, but it's not always easy to do. And so if we're trying to measure orientation, like just like I'm saying here, we want to make clear-cut distinctions, but it really isn't always that way. Kinsey talked a lot about what he called a 7-point continuum, right? So according to Kinsey, one of the most famous sex researchers of our time, he said that we go from 0 basically to like 6 or 7, that we can be exclusively heterosexual with no homosexual tendencies or contact. We can be in the middle where we're equally like homosexual and heterosexual, which we would traditionally call being bi. Or we could be exclusively homosexual with no heterosexual contact. And then there's a whole range in between. So according to Kinsey, right, like we're all on a continuum. So rather than saying you are gay, straight, bi, asexual, he would say, well, maybe you're I'm predominantly heterosexual, but every now and then, or like I've had a couple of incidents of being with somebody of the same sex, right? So he would put people on this continuum. Now, Kinsey almost exclusively looked at sex as defining your orientation. And as I mentioned, it tends to be a little bit more than that. And so there was a newer orientation grid that came out a handful of years back, maybe about 10 years ago, called the Klein Sexual Orientation Grid, or the KSOG, as it's sometimes abbreviated. And this takes into account all sorts of things. And it's really interesting to look at, because it takes into account the people that you enjoy hanging out with, who you prefer to be around, your past, your present, and your ideal. And I have this actually, and I always debate whether or not to give it to you. You're not going to turn this into me, but I want to give you a chance to think about it, because I think it's an interesting thing to do. And in my experience, people tend to be very secretive when they take this, right? And that's okay. You know, you don't need to share this with anyone. You don't need to let the people around you see it, and you're not turning it into me. So please feel free to be honest. But I'm going to give this to you, and then I'll explain a little bit of how to do this. And you're not writing your reaction to the comments, because you're just going to take it. But what I want you to do is look at this little card. And this is a version of the KSOG, like an abbreviated one. Just giving you a chance to think about this a little bit. Or quiet, we got serious. Determining our orientation. And don't let it quiz tell you, right? Oh, that's for the people. How dare you? Okay, so what you're gonna do when you look at this is you'll notice up at the top, there are several variables, right? There's who you're attracted to, sexual behavior, fantasies, emotional preference, social preference, lifestyle preference, and self-identification. And then underneath there are 2 scales. Okay, so there's a scale for A, B, C, D, and E, and then there's a scale for F and G. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna think about your past, you're gonna think about your present, and you're going to think about your ideal. And again, you do not need to share this with anyone, including me, but I do want you to think about it for a minute. And so what you'll do is you'll go through, who are you sexually attracted to? So think about in the past, you would choose something between 0 and 6, right? And then who in the present, and then think about your ideal. If you could choose in an ideal world, which one would you choose? Okay, and then you're going to do that for all of them. Make sure when you get to F and G that you switch to that second scale underneath. So I'll give you a few minutes and then I'll tell you how we can score that. So when you're done, if you want to be able to calculate what this means and get a score, just to give you this information and then you can keep going, what you'll do is you're going to add up all of the numbers that you put down. So add them all up. There's 21 scores. So add every single number. Feel free to use your phone or a more mathematically inclined neighbor, whatever you would like to do. But you're going to add up all of those numbers and then that will give you a total. And then you're going to divide that by 21. And that's going to give you a score that should be somewhere between like 0 and 6. If you have a number that's higher than that, you did something wrong. So add up all the scores to get a total and then divide it by 21.
So then your number should be somewhere between 0 and 6 when you end up with your number at the end.
And so once you have a number, you're like, what does that number mean, right? Where is this number comparing? You're going to compare it to that scale right here, right? So if you have like a 3, so point something, for example, then you're kind of in that both sexes equal. You're going to compare it to that first like A, B, C, D, E scale. So take your number that you got, that number average, which is somewhere between 0 and 6, and then see where you fell on that continuum of 0 to 6. Yeah, you don't have to round that, so like it doesn't have to be, like if you have like a 3.4, then you're kind of between 3 and 2, right? No, you're right in between 2 and 3 then, right? Like it is. I think we have to talk about it.
I don't know what
Hey.
Yes.
And we invited someone that did this.
What'd you get us?
I have the past is what problems here, like kind of regular.
Is anyone still calculating? I want to give you enough time to. I'll give you like 1 more minute. There are definitely some issues. with it. Definitely some problems. If you're still calculating, so it could be a little bit more.
It's like.
This was a guy who was in that.
All right.
For just a minute, there are some issues with this, in my opinion, right? I think there's some good things about this and some bad things. Out of curiosity, and I want to ask you to share your score. How many of you agree with your score? By show of hands, for the most part. You agree with your score. Okay, a lot of you, I'm kind of like so. So one thing for me that I always think is really interesting about this test is that who you hang out with influences your score a lot, right? And I have a problem with that a little bit, honestly. Like, so for me, like I self-identify as being like gay or lesbian. That's how I identify in my mind, right? But I really enjoy and would rather hang out with men. That brings my score down, right? That's kind of like in a weird way, like just because I enjoy hanging out with men doesn't mean I want anything else to do with those men, right? But it brings my score down quite a bit. Right. And then, how do I label or identify myself? Who have you had sex with? How are we defining sex? That might mean something from one person to another. Right. So when we're looking at this, there are definitely problems. Right. So my score, and I don't mind sharing this with you, my score was 4.4. Right. So hanging out and really enjoying the company of like guys kind of affected my orientation according to this. Now, is that true or not? I don't know, right? It's interesting to think about, though. What I like about this test is that it does take into account the past, the present, and your ideal. Because maybe your past and present haven't been quite what you wanted them to. And you have a different idea of what you would like if you could choose. But I don't know, any other like comments or thoughts? You don't have to share your score, but general thoughts. Yeah. Yeah.
You past, the present, the ideal, and then
add up those 3 columns and then divide by 21. So basically you're taking all of the scores, adding them all up and then divide by 21. Yeah, and that'll give you a number between 0 and 6, right? Yeah. Incidental. You had a few incidents, right?
Yeah, I don't know why I have the wording.
Yeah.
But,
Incidental sexuality sounds like that.
More near 3 or 4.
Okay.
So.
And bottom line, though, again, what you identify what you feel is what matters. Don't let a test, like, don't go home and be like, the test said I am this, so that's what I am, right? Always be critical with any kind of test. But I do think it starts to get at some interesting things, like who are you fantasizing about, right? So maybe the people that you fantasized about are different than the people you've been with, right? Should that count, right? According to this test, yes. According to Kinsey, not so much, right? So whose test you take and what elements they're adding. Again, I think a big issue with this one is how are you defining sex, right? Just because you haven't had sex with somebody of the opposite or same sex, does that count against you or toward you, right? Like, and so these are things just to think about when you take stuff like this. But I do think it's an interesting way to start thinking about what your orientation is. And a lot of people don't know. Some of you said this when you went out to do your research, that people didn't really know what their orientation was. And that's not that uncommon, right? Especially in people who are maybe younger and still trying to figure that out. Any other thoughts or comments, anything about this? It's just yours to keep. You can maliciously destroy it or whatever you want if you'd like to. But I think it's interesting to think about, right? And just something to keep in the back of your mind as we're going through this. But lots of different ways to measure and define orientation. So moving forward, what determines our orientation? Right? How do we decide what our orientation is? And this is a debate. We don't have the answer to this question, right? But it's definitely something that has received a lot of attention over time. So we look at biological factors, right? Nature-related factors like genetics and biology. And we look at nurture-related factors like the environment and so on. And so there's a lot of proposed ideas, but in the end, neither biological nor socialization theories have provided a completely satisfactory explanation as of today. So we don't necessarily know, right, is the take home from this. So there's some theories that propose that it's genetic, right, that your orientation is something that is somewhat genetic. Now, if this were true, homosexuality would have died out a long time ago, because traditionally people who are homosexual are less likely to have children because it's more difficult to do, right? And so that trait wouldn't be passed down nearly as frequently, and it would be something that probably would have died out. So the whole genetic argument is really inconclusive. There's a lot of twin studies that have been done, again, very inconclusive results. Looking at the effect of hormones, a lot of theories proposing that hormones when somebody is pregnant play a big role in somebody's orientation. There's some evidence that that might affect gender, but not as much when it comes to orientation, right? And so there's, again, very inconclusive results. Birth order. There's some studies that have looked at what is the order of birth in a family, and are firstborns, secondborns, thirdborns, or whatever more likely to identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual. Again, really impossible to conclude, to like make conclusions from, and very, very inconclusive in general. We also look at physiology, right? Are there differences in brain structures and different like anatomical like related things between gay, straight, lesbian, bisexual individuals? And for the most part, no, right? Nothing conclusive, right? So every single biological one has been relatively inconclusive. Same down here. Freud said that homosexuality was like the extreme form of narcissism, loving a body like your own, right? Of course, Freud would say that. Very sexist, very heterosexist in like his ideas, very heteronormative. We talk a little bit about experiences and learning, right? But this doesn't hold up either, right? So parents who are gay or lesbian don't tend to have children who are gay or lesbian more frequently than parents who are straight, right? People who have straight or like bisexual or heterosexual parents, it doesn't always conclusively pass down to their children either. So we don't see that experiences and learning tend to play a role. And then we have ideas about gender like nonconformity, that people who don't conform to gender must be gay or lesbian sometimes, and sometimes not, right? Like my partner, very feminine, right? And she would identify, I think, as bisexual if she had to choose, right? But me, I don't conform to gender at all. I kind of fit this, but a lot of people who are very like masculine or very feminine, right, might not identify in the same way when it comes to their orientation. So all of these things together, no matter what we have looked at, haven't given us a very satisfactory explanation of whether we're born this way. Right now you can have Lady Gaga stuck in your head with that. Whether we're born into our orientation, or you're singing it, I like it, right? It's gonna be stuck in your head for the day. whether you're born like that or do you choose this, right? And it's something interesting to think about. A lot of people think orientation is a choice, and a lot of people think that it's something you're born into. Maybe it's a combination of both, but we don't really know. And there was a statement put out by the APA. So I'll read this to you, 2019. This was, so it's a couple years old, but everything always is with statistics. But this is the official statement on what causes our sexuality or sexual orientation. They said the American Psychological Association said that currently there is no scientific consensus about the specific factors that cause an individual to become heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, or otherwise, including possible biological, psychological, or social effects of the parent's sexual orientation. Although much research has examined the possible genetic, hormonal, developmental, social, and cultural influences on orientation, no findings have emerged that permit scientists to conclude that orientation is determined by any particular factor or factors. The evaluation is that although some research may be promising in facilitating a greater understanding of the development of orientation, it does not permit a conclusion based in sound science at the present time. Okay, so that is our current statement on what causes orientation. Basically, we don't know, right? So it's probably some combination of all of these things, but it's interesting, right? This is something that people often want an answer to, because there are implications for each one. If you are born into your orientation versus if you chose it, right? There are consequences and kind of implications to that. So it's something that we have definitely wanted to answer, but haven't been able to do very successfully to date, at least as of right now. We might discover a gene or something for this one day, but for now, we don't really know. Okay, so kind of up to you to decide what you think. Based on some on national surveys, right, and these are flawed as well for a lot of reasons, it's estimated that about 3 to 4% of the population that are women, I'm sorry, so let's just read this. Homosexuality in men is estimated at 3 to 4%, women 2 to 3%. Popular opinion tends to range from 7 to 10%. Now, if we include bisexuality, this number shoots way up, right? But if we talk about identifying as gay or lesbian, the popular opinion is basically like 1 in 10. 1 in 10 people identifying as gay or lesbian. Now, why might the statistics on this be wrong? Can you think of any reasons why they could be wrong? Yeah, ask me. Lying, right? Okay, lying, that's a great one. What else could explain why they aren't correct? Yeah.
Maybe someone like slightly bisexual, so they don't take that label.
Yeah. Okay, I like that, right? Maybe they don't want to take that label because they don't feel like it totally fits them. Can you think of anything else? There's one thing that we talked about earlier, yeah?
Maybe they don't even know.
Yeah, right, maybe they don't know, right? So people might lie, they might not know, or they might not be sure, right? So when we get these popular surveys, people definitely lie, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to admit this on here. Who knows where that's going to come back to, right? Or who's going to get that information? Maybe they don't know. Maybe they're not sure. Maybe it's in flux and it's changing, right? So when we look at these surveys, that's just kind of something important to keep in the back of your mind. They're not always accurate, but in general, we can say that usually about 1 in 10 people tend to self-identify as gay or lesbian, and it's even higher if we include bisexuality. And as members of a minority group, right, whether it's 1 in 10 or 1 in 7 or 2%, 3%, 4%, people who identify as gay or lesbian or even bisexual often struggle with their orientation on some level. Okay, whether that is dealing with societal attitudes, it's dealing with maybe homophobia or hate crimes or legislation related to orientation. There's a lot of obstacles that people who identify in any minority status are going to face, whether that's orientation, gender, race, ethnicity, whatever it might be. When you're in a minority group, you tend to struggle a little bit. There tends to be some kind of societal implications. And some of the things that we see on here is that people who identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual do tend to face some marginalization, prejudice, and sometimes negative attitudes that are entrenched not only in our societal, but also our cultural and political systems. And there's been some really interesting it's kind of stuff coming up in this last year related to legislation related to orientation. But in general, what we can call homophobia right, is something that a lot of people who identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual might face. An irrational fear of homosexuality, the fear of the possibility of homosexuality in yourself, or even hating yourself for your orientation. You can have homophobia towards yourself, right? This is definitely something that happens. It's an internalized homophobia. But there's a lot of this, right? Where people find out that you might be gay or lesbian or bisexual and it makes them uncomfortable, right? And maybe they view you differently or they're like standoffish with you. Or people are victim of things like hate crimes, right? In 2019, again, statistics are always a few years back, 1,279 gay and lesbian individuals were victims of hate crimes in the United States, which resulted in either death or serious injury. Now, a hate crime is when somebody uses violence, intimidation, vandalism, because of your affiliation with a particular group. So in this case, we're talking about because of your orientation, being the victim of some kind of violence or hate or like targeting related to your orientation. That's obviously one very blatant form of homophobia that people can face, is being a victim of something like a hate crime. It can be much more subtle. It can be something from your parents or a family member, or maybe you're like a religious group that doesn't tolerate this as much, right? So very common for people who identify this way to face some level of homophobia from someone at some point in their life. There's a lot of really interesting like cultural stuff. I had to limit myself, so I tried to narrow it down to some kind of newer things and some older things. So a couple of things that are up here. There's a lot of like big things in our culture that have happened. This year, one of the big ones is the Don't Say Gay bill, which passed in Florida. And it's also on the agenda in 12 different states right now. So it's not just Florida. Florida's the only one who has passed it. But in Florida, you can actually lose your job as a teacher if you talk about orientation, right? So you're not allowed to talk about orientation or gender in public schools anymore. And that is something that is on like the docket in 12 different states as well as of right now. This is something really, really recent, like this year. So that would be an example of like homophobia and like systemic or political like homophobia. So I have a little bit more on this. So the details of this bill vary between state to state, but overall they prohibit schools from using a curriculum or discussing topics of gender or orientation. So the gay element is part of it, right? But it has a lot of things where it goes against all public evidence to create a safe and supportive environment for transgender, non-binary, queer, gay, and lesbian youths and teachers to thrive. So you could lose your license, lose your job, and even go to jail, depending on the severity of the infraction in Florida and potentially 12 other states. Yeah. Yes, so it's old. It's 10 years old at this point, right? But yes, it was a thing. I don't know if any of you remember. Does any of you remember that? So sadly, right, in life, we have to choose the places that we support or don't support. Family doesn't eat at Chick-fil-A because of this, which is so sad because the chicken is so good, right? But I don't eat there, right? I drive by and I'm like, oh, I've only had it once in my life and I remember it fondly, but I won't eat there, right? And like there are places I don't shop because of the things that they support or don't support, right? These are choices that we have to make, right? Sometimes it's difficult. Like I love, what's the sandwich shop that's over in Moore Park? Oh my gosh, I just totally forgot it. Like Jimmy John's, right? I think like the guy is a poacher, right? And like has killed all sorts of like lions and like wild animal for sport. So we don't eat there, like, because we don't support that, like as a family. So it limits our food, right? It's so sad. Or we don't shop at certain places. So back in 2012, Chick-fil-A had a campaign where for the day, they said every single cent that they make on that day, August 1st, 2012, was going to go to fighting gay rights. And so what happened, and this was wild, I lived in Reseda at the time, and there's that Chick-fil-A like on Reseda Boulevard in the valley. And we drove by it and the line was just like out the door, around the corner, all the way back past like the El Torito. And I was like, what's going on? Why is everyone in line at Chick-fil-A, right? Like looking it up, it was because they had this national day where every single penny that they made was going to fight gay rights, right? And so it was a statement made by this company, a very religious like company, right? They're closed on Sundays for religious reasons. And so they said, show your support. Let's see, I can barely read it here. Show your support for the traditional American family values professed by Christian family-owned Chick-fil-A by taking your family, friends, and colleagues to Chick-fil-A for all 3 meals or at least one. right? And then it goes on to say like Almighty God created the races, and like it goes on and on and on, right? And so every penny that they made that day was to fight gay rights. And they had 387 people more on average per day than they do on a normal day, right? So across the country, 387 people more on average than they would normally have per day, right? So a lot of people lined up to support this. And then interestingly, the next day there was they had a kiss-in, like the gay and lesbian community decided to go to every Chick-fil-A and make out inside them the next day, which I thought was hilarious. But we get companies like Chick-fil-A, Berea, the pasta company, right, had a whole thing of like saying that we don't support gay families, right? That it said, I would never do an advertisement with a homosexual family. If the gays don't like it, they can go eat another brand, right? There's all these things, right? The Pulse nightclub shooting, Florida, right, where 50 people were killed and 53 people were hurt just a handful of years ago. The Don't Say Gay bill. There's just so many of these things in our culture. They're getting better, right? Or we were kind of on this very positive trajectory, and then now we're kind of going backward a little bit, right? Gay marriage even is under attack, right? As of like the Roe versus Wade rulings and things that we'll talk about later. The next offshoot of that is interracial marriage and gay marriage, right? Which is just wild to think. That's like 50 years ago that we're going back in like human rights or more. But these are just a few, right? There's a lot of like very political, cultural, societal norms and ideas around orientation. A couple other things. This is older, but still something worth mentioning. Sodomy laws. Okay, so these existed in 14 states up until 2003. So we're about 20 years ago at this point. But sodomy is any kind of sexual act that is traditionally not intended toward like procreation. So technically, a heterosexual couple engaging in oral sex would meet the criteria of a sodomy act or a sodomy like behavior. And this comes from Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The like unholy cities in the Bible that had a lot of sin. But if you go back, what happened is anybody who was engaging in what they deemed homosexual activities could be thrown into jail, fined up to $10,000, or basically like get in trouble with the law. And these were very disproportionately enforced for gay couples versus straight couples. Now you might ask, how would anyone know what you're doing in the privacy of your home? Neighbors would report their neighbors for this. Like, I suspect them of being gay. They would call the police and report them, and people would be arrested for engaging in like sexual activities with a same-sex partner. And you can see the states that are red are the ones that had this all the way up until 2003. And some of them were struck down way back in the 70s, right? But this was definitely something that was very enforced up till about 20 years ago, which is something to be aware of. And again, sodomy is traditionally any act that isn't intended toward procreation. One more thing here in terms of same-sex marriage, right? So this one's a fascinating one. It's kind of gone through a lot of changes over time, and we're talking about like political stuff here. But in 1996, the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, was passed. And that allowed, or it kept states from having to recognize same-sex marriage on a federal level, right? So back in the 90s, this was something that was passed in order to prevent same-sex marriage rights. California has a really unique history. In 2008, we passed Proposition 8, making gay marriage legal. And then in 2013, we took it back, right? So we're the only state to pass it and then remove it, right? So in 2008, we said, okay, same-sex marriage is legal in California, not federally recognized, but only in this state. And then in 2013, we deemed it unconstitutional, and then we allowed it to go back, right? So it's kind of gone back and forth in California. In 2015, right, we ruled nationwide that same-sex marriage was legal on a federal level. So before 2015, if a couple was married in California legally and they went to visit another state, they didn't have any legal rights. They couldn't file joint taxes together. They couldn't visit each other in a hospital in other states. They wouldn't have rights over each other's children, even in other states. So in 2015, right, it was passed that same-sex marriage was legal across the country. And right now, there's an act that's in progress called the Respect for Marriage Act. This is right now, trying to safeguard the rights to same-sex marriage nationwide, because there's a lot of legislation to try and reverse same-sex marriage rights and interracial marriage rights as a result of the passing of the like Roe versus Wade legislation that went through recently. So when they removed women's right to abortion, it opened the gateway, and now the next thing that a lot of people are fighting for on a federal level is to remove same-sex marriage and to remove interracial marriage. So interesting, we talked about this in chapter 1, right? We have like a positive time, and then we tend to have more of like a backlash. And it seems like we're kind of in a backlash right now. Though on a federal level, they're trying to pass this Respect for Marriage Act to protect same-sex marriage and interracial marriage so that this doesn't get taken away by individual states like we've done with reproductive rights. So there's a lot of legislation related to this over time, right? And as of right now, it is legal to marry a same-sex partner, and it's federally recognized. And we'll see what happens. This is something that's passed one stage of vote, but it has another one to go. But there would be a lot of ramifications for that if that were to be reversed, right? So just interesting to look at, this isn't something that's universally accepted, and there's a lot of kind of back and forth in the legality of it. Any like thoughts or comments or questions or anything related to any of this here? Yeah.
Take is on like recent like legislation in the state and state legislatures like in the West and South about like trans people's rights.
Yeah.
School, so like youth trans people in schools that are being like blocked from sports.
Yeah.
School activities.
It's so mixed, right? And that's part of this, if I go back, right, that Don't Say Gay bill is more than just orientation, it's also gender. And so in Florida and these other 12 states, they're trying to ban any kind of gender or orientation discussion. And it's interesting because here, like on our campus, we have gender neutral bathrooms. A lot of campuses and even like elementary schools and middle schools and high schools have gender neutral bathrooms, where you see them more and more. And yet, so we have this progression on one side. And then on the other side, we have people saying like, let's not talk about this, like anti-trans rights. It's very split, right? And so there's a lot of stuff in our country that's very split right now when it relates to gender and orientation and trans rights and gay rights. It's kind of all over the place. So yeah, there's a growing population of trans youth, right? There's more and more trans youth as it stands, and yet the rights are very polarized right now. So I think it's a little sad, right, that we're trying to say you can't even talk about this, because the research, as it was saying, is that we want to create a safe and supportive environment for people, regardless of their orientation, their gender, whatever. And by saying we're not even going to recognize or talk about it, that kind of is the complete opposite. So I see there's dangers in it, obviously. And that's the next slide we'll get to next time, what this does to people's mental health and their propensity towards suicidality and depression, that we're seeing more and more of that as people feel like, well, if we're not even allowed to learn about it, there's nobody like me, and what are the consequences? So what we'll do is we'll pick up here when I see you on Monday. We'll keep going. We'll talk about the rest of this this chapter. If you didn't sign in, I have the sheet up here. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of you. I'll see you in October, right? It's October next week. I'll see you in October.